This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by DigitalOcean and by Ting. Go to last.ting.com and save $25 off your first device or your first month of service. Welcome to Linux Action Show, episode 327. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Hey, Matt. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Are you ready for me to tell folks about the big show today?
Absolutely.
Coming up on this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, the crew went down to Chicago for LinuxCon 2014, and we've got 5 great interviews we're going to play in today's episode for you. Plus, we've also got the news. Some big stories are developing this week. Somebody rather important and of note is still fighting for Linux on the desktop. We'll tell you about that. Plus, the death of Linux in Munich might have been slightly exaggerated. We've got the details. There's also some other shenanigans that Microsoft's up to, and it's time to go get yourself certified. We'll tell you more about that. Plus, as always, we've got our picks, feedback segment, and all that stuff. So why don't we start with the picks? You ready?
All right, let's get rocking.
All right, Matt. Our runs Linux this week. Prepare your body because your life is about to get so much easier because Cloud Media's home automation box runs Linux. Yeah, this is the Stack box, and it's going to automate everything in your life. It's on Kickstarter right now, but they eventually plan to have prices down around 79 bones. That's U.S. bones. The company's been around for a while. They've sold like the popcorn box for a long time, which I've owned a couple of. And the Stack box will launch with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and Z-Wave protocols for home automation. We'll offer optional XB insertion and Dust networks, wireless connectivity, as well as XN powerline networking. In this, you got Zigbee, you got RFID, you got Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Z-Wave, all coming on the Kickstarter model. Then they'll have other models later on. Here's all the parts. So, Matt, what they've got here is a Linux box. It's got an ARM11 processor in it running at 640 megahertz. You got 512 megabytes of flash storage, 256 megabytes of RAM.
Decent.
This little guy connects to all of the little ancillary services. So the idea is you've got all of these Internet of Things devices that don't communicate with each other.
And what was the protocol they're using? No, it wasn't X10. It was something.
It'll
else.
do all of them. It's going to do. Okay. It'll do Z-Wave, XB, X10. It'll all.
Wow.
Of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
oh my God.
This little Linux box is supposed to bring everything together and give you one interface to communicate with all of the different Internet of Things standards. God. And I think their idea is they'll continue to push updates to it so they can keep it going. They also, which I thought was really cool and could give you some growth down the road, are including the Raspberry Pi bus connector where you can, click stuff onto the Raspberry Pi and expand its capability. That same connector will be in this little box, which is kind of neat. The main Stack box interface will be through your smart device. It'll be a hub. It'll be available. The controllers will be available for Android and iOS with desktop apps as well for Windows and Chrome browsers.
Interesting.
Chrome browsers for all OSs or Windows 8 apps. They're obviously going to release an SDK as well.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Do you want to see a little? Because it's on Kickstarter. So
I love the fact that it does so many different protocols, because some protocols, let's face it, are better than others, obviously. Yeah.
Well, and you got different people implementing different things. So 291 backers, trying to raise $65,000. They got $29,000 right now. Now, we don't really know for sure if this thing's legit. The one thing that gives me some confidence is these guys have shipped the popcorn hour before. But let's watch a little bit of the video and see what we get. We'll see, Matt. We'll save
popcorn
judgment.
hour is pretty cool. I think they could do it.
Yeah.
The problem today is user experience is painful because technology makes things complex. We need a solution that makes technology easy to use so that your devices work together. The truth is that all our devices speak in different languages. Today, there is no single device that connects all devices, extends your apps from your phone to your home, and has the ability to share and store into your own personal cloud. The solution is to have one device, to command all digital equipment in a universal language. We introduce our product, the Stack Box, a universal controller that speaks to all your devices and stack. I
want to pause it right here. This, to me, this is so obviously something that so many companies are going to get into. Like, Samsung just bought like I can't remember, it was the Wii thing or Smart Things automation stuff. Android has a home automation SDK. This stuff to me is blowing up like crazy. So the real question here is, could some independent company base all this on Linux? And I hope the answer could be potentially if everything's all standards based, because if I have my home being controlled by a computer,
Right.
Yeah, I would prefer it to be a box like this than something that just sits on the wall with a fancy little shiny screen that's completely remotely controlled by some remote cloud service.
Well, at the beginning of the video, it was a little concerning to me because I was half expecting them to get up and like pull out a USB cord out of the back of their necks and get up and start their day. I mean, I didn't know how much automation we're talking here, but I like where they're going. I like the fact that it hopefully will be standard space, and I hope that enough money's thrown behind this to actually make it a thing.
I'll play another minute.
That's all your apps.
Oh yeah, here we go. That's what I was waiting for.
Yeah, shower scene.
Phone,
Go.
music,
No, the
video,
music.
Oh,
lights, and
yes,
security
obviously.
for your home.
Clearly.
Supported by our companion app, control the stack from anywhere. One box and one app that simplifies your life and saves you
I
time.
want that fireplace.
Easy setup. Connect or pair it with your existing home automation devices. It just works out of the box. Get home, plug in the power, and then install our companion app on your iOS or Android device. Then connect to the box. And there are multiple setup wizards in the app that help you add devices. Once added, you can create rules, add apps from the App Store, and automate your home.
So this is you could also see we'll stop it here, but you could also see how like they could keep an up-to-date directory of new devices that come on the market, and when you select that device in the app, it could download all of like the little parameters it needs to know about controlling that device from their central server if they were able to keep it going. I mean, the reason I bring this up is because I think it's really interesting because it's a category that whether we like it or not, it's here. And they're going to be pushing it like crazy. I don't know if it's going to hit this holiday season, but you got to believe that holiday season 2015, it's going to be all about the home automation gadgets.
I'd say 2015 is probably your best bet.
Yeah.
I think at this point, they're still pretty early days. But, you know, will it be successful for this particular thing? I think if they can develop a way to actually get services behind it, perhaps.
Yeah, and if it works with enough popular devices on the market, you know, things like the Nest or whatever that people already have. I'm not so sure about any of these things, but I like the idea of the stack box itself. So we'll have a link to that in the show notes if you want to back it. I'm still waiting. I haven't made up my mind yet.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a neat idea.
It's a neat idea. Yeah, you kind of want to see a little more action.
If we get enough of these, it could give Linux that install base it needs for Skynet. I mean, that could be essential.
That could be it. Yes,
that could be how you roll it out initially. Is that's how it could control our homes.
I think as long as it can't like lock your windows and doors, I think it's fine. That's when I draw the line.
Hey, Matt. By the way, we just installed new Bluetooth locks for the windows here at the JB1 Studios. Don't freak out, though. Yeah.
Rollers start coming down.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe we could all just find a happy middle ground and just build our own cloud and have our own personal Skynet over at DigitalOcean.com, our sponsor for this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. So DigitalOcean is awesome. I've been using it for a long time, and I'll show you how here in just a second. But first, let me tell you a little bit about DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to spin up a cloud server. Users can create a server in about 55 seconds, some 32 seconds, and pricing plans start only $5 per month.
$5.
$5 per month.
$5.
That gets you 512 megabytes of RAM.
Jeez.
A 20 gigabyte SSD. Yeah, I/O density's all up in that business. One blazing fast CPU and a terabyte of transfer connected to tier 1 bandwidth with data centers all over the world. In fact, DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and a brand shiny new data center in London. Plus, they just turned on IPv6 support in their New York data center. Another one lit up. And their interface is super simple and intuitive. Their control panel is incredible. If you're watching the video version, this is the control panel right here. This isn't even like a fake version of the control panel. You look at this and think about what this is doing. You're provisioning all of the KVM virtual machine specs, setting up the disk, selecting the image it's going to be based from, the geolocation data center you want it deployed in, and then you click a button, and under a minute, a server that you have root access to is spun up, and it costs you $5 per month. But you don't even have to pay $5 per month, at least for 2 months. If you use the promo code last August when you check out last August, we'll get you a $10 credit. Last August, all one word, lowercase, and then you can try it out for 2 months for free because you're going to get a $10 credit. That means that $5 droplet will last you for 2 months. And here's what I'm doing with one of my $5 droplets. I've got an OwnCloud server set up. And OwnCloud 7, you know, Matt, it's so easy. I went over to the official OwnCloud site. Yeah. They have instructions to get it running on Ubuntu 14.04. So I deployed a 14.04 droplet on DigitalOcean. And this is running off of my DigitalOcean droplet right now. Like, here's some pictures. Here's me and the boy playing a little mini golf, and I'm using the DigitalOcean droplet to host my own cloud instance where I have picture gallery up there.
Oh, that's a good picture.
And it's a really cool service because now I've actually on my phone switched over to this for all of my back-end contact, calendar, taskless syncing. So I'm no longer syncing off of Google. I'm Google free now, and instead I'm syncing to my own cloud instance on DigitalOcean.
Nice.
It's my own cloud on my own DigitalOcean droplet, which I have root access to, and I can take snapshots, back it up at any time, move it around, or if I have a crazy idea, or maybe when it's time to upgrade to OwnCloud 8, I'll take a snapshot, I'll do the upgrade, and if something goes wrong, one-click restore, right back. That control panel is awesome, and it all sits on top of KVM, which you know is an awesome technology.
It's very, very cool.
DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code last August when you check out. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Linux Action Show.
Definitely.
Okay, Matt, we got to get into our app picks. I want to, from time to time, I want to share a screenshot program with the folk. I'm huge into screenshots for the show workflow, and what I need is a quick screenshot exactly of an area, upload that bad mamma jamma somewhere online, and get me a URL to that stat because I'm in the middle of writing show notes, and I want to go boom, boom, and I've used a lot of different programs to do that. Shared a few of them with you on the show. I got a new favorite. Might change down the road, but I want to point you over to Shutter. They just had a brand new release. Shutter-project.org version 0.93 came out with Big Dog Dropbox support. This Dropbox support, they've rewritten it. So if you're a Dropbox user, you can now use Shutter to save screenshots directly to your Dropbox account and publish them online, get public URLs, etc. Okay, that's neat. I don't use Dropbox.
Yeah, you don't use Dropbox, so no big deal.
It's great though if you want it. But here is let's go take a little look at Shutter. So I have on the right side of my screen my Shutter session. On the left side of my screen, I've got Cool Old Terminal because it's Cool Old Terminal, and I want to take a screenshot of something cool in Cool Old Terminal. So I'll make this window right there. You have a lot of options like you might expect with your standard screenshot application. You can take an entire screenshot of the desktop, a specific window, a timed screenshot, etc., etc. What I always want to use is selection because maybe I'm selecting an area of a website, something on my screen. So now I've chose selection. I get a super zoomed in area so I can see right where I want my selection to start. I also get an overlay of my different options here, how I can take the screenshot, how I can resize my selection too, which I like a lot. So say I grab an area and I overdid a little bit, I can actually go in here and kind of refine that a little bit, which is nice because I usually always need to do that.
That's like a little bit of a cropping tool there.
Yeah, I don't color inside the lines so well, so it's nice to have. Then once I have it, I hit enter. Now, this is another thing I love, is it then grabs it and holds it inside the Shutter session right here. So now I can look at it. I could maybe edit it if I wanted to. Maybe if I want to go in here and annotate on it or something like that. I want to add an arrow and say, man, Matt, look at this error message I'm having right here.
Exactly.
And then I could send it up to you, right? Once I'm done annotating or editing it, this is the part I loves me a lot. You get to the export section. Now, you got all kinds of options in export. The one I want to show you, though, is Imager Guest, because this is the one I like using. Of course, you could also drop it on an FTP site or anywhere on your file system. Other upload options include Dropbox, IT Images, Minus, Totally Libre. So a lot of options. Imager Guest, though, that's the one I like. So now check out what you get next. So you hit upload, as you'd expect. It sends it right up to Imager, nice and quick.
Oh, no way.
Then you get direct links to the different sizes on Imager. Now, for some reason, this just tickles my fancy beyond belief because whenever I'm embedding in the show notes, I never really want to embed the original resolution. That's usually like 1920 by 1080. I want to embed a large scaled down version of that image, the quote unquote large that Imager has. I all I have to do is I click this single link that single button right there, and now I've gotten the large quote unquote version of that image. So if I go back up to my browser and I paste, there is my screenshot right there, the large version.
Fantastic.
And of course, because it's Imager, you could just drop off the .jpeg, and you could then go get the embed codes for it.
Well, what's cool is you don't ever have to even deal with the browser. I mean, like you literally just boom, boom, boom.
What I do, because we're using Markdown, if you'll see right here, I have the Linux Foundation, and all I do is when I took the screenshot of that Linux Foundation from their website, I just then used Shutter to upload it to Imager. I grabbed the URL, and then I just dropped it right here in the Markdown, and never even went to another window or anything like that.
You know it's good.
Boom, boom, really quick. So Shutter just has the new version. Like I said, the big improvement, of course, is Dropbox. OMG Ubuntu has a write-up on that if you're curious. They've also got a link to a PPA if you're on Ubuntu. If you're on Arch, it's in the community repo. It is the most current version already. Nothing special need to be done there. So Shutter 0.93. fixes public links, improves Dropbox support, and is just a totally kick-butt screenshot utility for Linux. I've used a lot of them. I use probably all of them. This is my current favorite, though.
Yeah, I'm going to say that's probably going to become my new favorite, actually, based on what I'm seeing. I love that imager stuff.
Okay, so now let's talk about my favorite encoder for Linux.
All right.
Probably my favorite encoder for every operating system. It's Handbrake. Handbrake relies on some awesome technology, mainly FFmpeg, and a few other little magic goodies, and some presets. Well, it's really hard to get your hands on it right now. In fact, I didn't even bother trying to install it on Arch. There is a PPA for it, and I think there's, I don't know, you probably, if you grab the AUR version that comes from their Git page, you probably get
I'm sure
this
there's
too.
something, yeah.
So version 0.10 of Handbrake was just released. This is our spotlight for this week. And this is an update I think everybody should check out. 0.10, which is only in beta right now, includes a few improvements to encoding and quality, all the kind of standard stuff you would expect. It also does better chapter scanning now if you're actually going to back up a DVD, and a few other things. Here's the one that I thought was actually really nice to see.
Okay.
They have finally added WebM support to Handbrake. And
really?
This is really good because there's been a lack of good GUI tools to do WebM encoding under Linux. And it's been one of the things that's been I've been kind of like meh about WebM is there's not an awesome way to do it unless you drop down to the command line, which isn't hard, but it's going to be a big barrier for some folks.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, that and I don't want to type. So
here's the other caveat. It is WebM, but it has to be in an MKV container. So you're not going to make .webm files.
I'm still okay with that because you
can still use Vorbis audio or whatever.
That's really a container I use mostly anyway. So
other big change in Handbrake 0.10 beta. It's switched now to GTK3. They've updated it to GTK3. It looks better. It's more integrated with the GNOME desktop, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
They've included some new presets, and they've also cleaned up the batch encoding mode. So if you do batch encodings, like if you're doing multiple episodes off a DVD and you add it to the queue and you add it to the queue and you add it to the queue and you go, that's been cleaned up. Also, you might have encountered some crashes under Linux. I have with the batch queue. That also has been fixed. The cause of that crash has been fixed. So the best one of the best video encoders for any platform ever is getting a great update. Keep your eye out because you'll probably be able to find your hands on the beta if you're a Handbrake user. It looks like a must-have update, and huge props to those guys. I'm so glad they're around. We don't currently use this to encode Jupiter Broadcasting shows, but there was a good period of time where I just had presets for different shows in there that I'd made up. And even though Rikai has scripted the whole thing using FFmpeg, but back then I would just select the preset, boom, and spit it out. I would then drop to a command line and use FFmpeg on the command line to make the WebM versions. Now that this is in there, it's super cool. And I don't know if it's time to start encoding your local media collection to WebM, but if you're kind of, if the license of the codec is really important to you, you just got a great way to do it.
Yeah, I think it's doable, and I think it's worth trying. Take something short, see how it looks.
All right, Matt, so that's Handbrake and Shutter, and you can find links to those in the show notes. And if you have any app recommendations or picks, we'd love to hear them. You can submit them to reddit.com/r/LinuxActionShow, linuxactionshow.reddit.com, or linuxactionshow@jupiterbroadcasting.com is fine, too. We'll catch it in the email as well.
That's right.
All right, Matt, let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode's brought to you by
Ting.com, Matt. Everybody, last.ting.com. Go there right now and check it out, last.ting.com. What is Ting? Let me tell you. It's my mobile service provider. It's Matt's mobile service provider, and it's going to be your future mobile service provider. It has to be. Matt, is it not inevitable?
Boom.
Is it not inevitable?
I mean, it's going to happen. You're going to hit this like
you're going to come to this realization. You're going to say, self, I have been distracted by the shiny. I have been led down the path of oppression by wireless carriers.
Preach it.
Too bad that's not actually exaggeration either. Literally is probably what happened to a lot of us. So go over to last.ting.com right now and get started because Ting is doing wireless differently. No contracts, no early termination fee. My favorite part. You only pay for what you use. It's a flat $6 a month, and then your usage on top of that. Minutes, messages, megabytes, they get all added up. Whatever bucket you fall into, that's what you pay. You want hotspot, and you turn that on. It's just data usage. You don't have to have a special plan. Go get yourself a Nexus 5 from Ting right now. Do yourself a favor. It's $350 right from Ting. You've got a phone that you fully control, you own, connected to a network that has no early termination fee, no contract, and you only pay for what you use, and it can become a hotspot when you need it to. Plus, they have no-hold customer service. You can call them at 1-855-TING-FTW. I've told you about it for a long time. Coffee Guy wrote in, though. He said, after vowing never to sign another wireless contract and hopping around many different prepaid plans, my boss came in yesterday and announced that he had upgraded his phone. After convincing him that I needed his old one, I had a shiny Sprint iPhone 4S in great condition. When I went home, I headed to last.ting.com. I used Amazon to log in, because they support Amazon login. Nice. And in just a couple of minutes, my new line was activated. And he means it, a couple of minutes. It was so simple and fast, just in time, too, because a few minutes later, my cable internet went out. I simply turned on tethering and went about my business. Anyhow, I've been sold on the goodness of Ting for a while now, but I wasn't until I had signed up that I understood how stupid easy it was to make the whole thing work. In my case, I was signed up in seconds, didn't pay a penny to get started, and with the credit, my first month is going to be free or next to nothing. Even better, I don't know how any carrier lets you. I don't know any carrier that lets you straight up turn off your voicemail from such a useful dashboard.
I know, right? It's like you can literally toggle on and off your features. You know?
Love the dashboard. The other thing I love about Ting is they are really passionate about all of this. The web standards, the technology behind the dashboard, and the mobile operating systems themselves. And that's why they feature an app pick every week, Matt. So why don't we check out Ting's app pick of the week?
Want the best credit card rewards wherever you shop? I'm Kyra, and this is Ting's app of the week.
Go Ting! Woo! Go Ting!
Oh, yeah.
Wallaby is your personal financial advisor. Tell the app which credit cards you own, and while shopping in person or online, Wallaby will suggest the best credit cards for you to use. Simply put, it maximizes your rewards points to save you an average of $200 each year.
Whoa.
Head to your wallet to add all of your credit cards.
Okay.
The best card section is where you get connected with top-notch bonuses. Wallaby automatically tracks rewards programs and new promotions to display the perfect credit card to use. Places uses your current location to display specific establishments in your area, suggest a card to use, and why. Let's say you're filling up on gas. Wallaby will suggest a credit card to get you the best possible return, like getting 5% cash back on up to $1,500.
Nice.
There's a separate section for online purchases, and a third that lists categories like hotels, drugstores, and restaurants. These tabs are super useful to figure out all the types of rewards you can currently take advantage of. Wallaby is available for free on Android and iOS. You can find a link right beside me and in the description below. Thanks for watching, and if you're interested in more app reviews, please subscribe.
Last.ting.com. You can also check them out on Twitter, TingFTW. Call them 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. or 8 p.m.
Jeez.
And a real person in their customer service department will answer the phone, and then that person will answer your question. Last.ting.com. Real humans, Matt. It's something new they're trying.
Yeah, you know, I'm sure, you know, other mobile providers, I mean, you got your Oompa Loompas,
Right, sure.
you got your Tree Elves.
No.
Don't even get me started on that one provider's ogres.
You're right, and I think one of them just has like that IBM Watson in there, and they don't even have any people or creatures. Yeah. No, you know what? Ting has got it all figured out. They really are mobile that makes sense. It's no BS. Last.ting.com. Thanks, Tim. Okay, we've got to talk about our first story. This is the one that is making every news publication, every link site work on the weekend. There's every now and then there's a story where everybody has to post over the weekend. They can't let it slide until Monday, and that was Linus Torvalds' comments at LinuxCon this week. Also fitting that our top news story is out of LinuxCon, since this is our LinuxCon episode. So Linus was up on stage with some other Linux kernel developers, and it was being moderated by Greg KH. And the discussion came up of, how much of the world Linux has conquered. Where could we possibly ever go next? What could we possibly do next? And Linus is like, well, I have an idea. And the audio is a little rough here on this clip, so I'll play it for you. But there is a little bit of a buzz, but just pretend like it's not there. I shouldn't have said anything at all, because now you're going to notice. Don't let it freak you out. You can do it.
Well, I mean, we're running really well. We're running everywhere. I made the joke that we've taken over the world, right? There's no industry that I know of that we're not. But do you think, where are we going next?
That's correct.
We've conquered pretty much every major industry. What's left?
I still want that desktop.
You want the desktop?
And the thing is, I don't believe it's a kernel problem.
It's not.
It's a whole infrastructure problem, and I think we'll get there one day, right? And
the year of the desktop?
I'm not going to say that. But.
Andy, what do you think? Is there anywhere that we're going to go that we're not?
I think there are spaces where it might be really hard if you want aircraft components.
We're in aircraft.
But the things that make the plane stay in the air, those are...
We're doing that.
Really?
Yeah.
News to me.
So,
wow.
So what do you think, Matt? He says it's an infrastructure problem, and by that I think he means OEMs. I think he means software. I think he means a whole lot of things.
I would agree in that if I just look at nothing but hardware detection between Windows 7 or 8 or whatever it may be versus, say, Linux, I don't have dunk. I don't have none of that other kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's not plug and play like it used to be. Back in the day, it was, can you do plug and play?
So everything just works out of the box. So I think at a kernel level, I would agree with that. I think all the important stuff that you care about does, generally speaking, for the most part, work out of the box. I think it's the fact that if I go to the store and buy a computer, it doesn't have Linux on it. So I think that's probably a big part.
Yeah, and it's starting to change with Chromebooks and whatnot. But I hope so. I think it's inevitable. I think because I see, and they talk about this, by the way, we'll have the whole video linked in the show notes if you want to watch it. In there, Greg says that he sees Linux as a 30 to 50 year technology, like it has 30 to 50 years left in it. I don't see 30 to 50 years left in Windows. I don't see 30 to 50 in Mac OS.
I don't see 10 years left in Windows, to be brutally honest. I think that I know of companies right now that are very Windows centric, and they've just about had enough. So they're getting tired of it.
You think about how much the industry has changed in the last. Let's go on the low end of Greg's prediction. Let's say 30 years. And remember, he's saying 30 to 50. So let's go 30 years. And you figure how much the industry has changed in the last 30 years, right? It's gone from not being an industry to being an industry in the last 30 years. And so there's so much that's going to change. But one thing that really strikes me as a trend that's pushing us in a certain direction is I think we will have a future one day where it's ridiculous not to be using Linux because so much of the world will run on Linux because of all of the Android devices. Like when you want an embedded system now, it's default Android. All of the server-side cloud services that are deployed in the tens of thousands by these companies are all Linux-based. And even the systems like Android and Chrome OS, where they're not directly Linux systems, like you can't just as a Linux user, just live in the Linux land there. They are based on the same kernel. They use a lot of the same tools. Just that level of familiarity will make that the de facto technology platform. And there's a lot of great options out there for a lot of different systems, but nothing like BSD or there's other alternatives, but nothing can compete. Nothing can compete with the deployment and scale of Android now. That ship is so sailed. It never matters how many servers get switched from Linux to FreeNAS so they can have ZFS. It doesn't matter how many MacBook Pros are sold ever. They will never, ever touch the install base of things like Android. And that is Linux. Chromebooks are Linux. All these servers are Linux. That will, I think, if you just look over the next 30 years, that's just going to push Linux everywhere, not because it's like this big commercial success, but because over time, all of these specialty technology shops will eventually move on, and it will become like too expensive for them to build these specialty systems. We are watching it. We're going to have an interview in the second half of the show. We are watching it happen right now to networking equipment. And this is like nothing I ever saw in my career in IT. What is happening in networking, where Linux is coming in right now in networking and replacing systems that were of incredible expense and complexity before, that were considered never possible to be done on a general purpose operating system, are now being totally replaced by Linux-powered switches and core network infrastructure. And it's incredible to watch it. And it's going to happen in every market. We watched it happen in mobile devices and embedded devices. We watched it happen in the server space. We watched it happen in the network stack right now. We will eventually see it happen on the desktop because it's simply, I don't think, will make sense for, in the long 30, 40, 50 years sense, anybody else to be there.
I think the biggest strength that Linux has now and in the future is the fact that it's not tied to a company. I think the fact that I think that's where it really shines, and that we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that, let's say Google screws the pooch and some other company does something dumb and everybody else implodes and explodes and whatever. Someone else will come along, take the baton and run with it. And I think that's the difference, is that Microsoft, Apple, these guys are company-centric. So if something happens to the company, that's all she wrote. Simple as that.
Yeah, yeah, and so I think it'll happen. I just don't know if it'll happen as soon as we all want it.
It's going to happen incrementally. We got to quit looking.
Happen for me.
I mean,
it depends on who you are.
It's case by case scenario.
It's incremental. Yeah,
it's incremental, and it's usually it's underspoken and soft spoken. You don't think about it. You're using it and not thinking about it. You're using Android, not thinking about it. I mean, most people don't realize how deep in our lives it already is. So
yeah, and I wonder too, your point about one of Linux's strengths is that it's not a single company.
Yeah.
I wonder if that also translates to one of its strengths is its distributed development model. Like a lot of times we'll hear one of the benefits of FreeBSD is it's built by a cohesive team. Everything from the ground up is like from the kernel to the userland tools. It's one team, one foundation, the FreeBSD Foundation. But is that not just a centralization of power that eventually could be prone to...
I think they're closer to Linux than they would be, say, like a company, simply because of the fact that there are people that can be trained and plopped into place. They are a foundation and not a company. Their motivation isn't to turn the almighty buck.
Right. Yeah.
So I think they definitely fall safe on that. I'm sure Alan would certainly.
And of course they're not going to be as likely to because they're not there to really necessarily turn a buck. They're not going to have to all of a sudden get a new commercial idea that they just have to chase.
And they're not going to rush.
It.
They're not worried about growth. They're worried about it not sucking.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what they're aimed at.
All right. So you probably all heard the rumors about Munich ditching Linux after a 10-year migration. It was one of a big conversation point in this week's Linux Unplugged, so go check that out if you didn't hear that. I thought that was a pretty cool conversation. Well, now we've actually gotten some real responses from the city council, from people that are working at the project, and Tech Republic has a write-up on it. Nick Heath wrote this piece. The Munich City Council says a review of its IT has not been triggered by staff dissatisfaction after moving from Windows to Linux on the desktop, in spite of news reports to the contrary, which has been just taken off like wildfire. The council says that they've decided that they're just going to do. They're not backing away from Linux. They just the recently elected mayor. I'm not going to get his name right. Dieter Ritter has instead simply commissioned a report into the future IT system for the council. Now, reason why people took this really the wrong way is because this guy is publicly stated, "Oh, I'm a big fan of Microsoft."
Yeah, that kind of sets the tone.
Yeah, so when that guy says he's going to launch, a study into the effectiveness of the IT infrastructure, and he's gone on record saying I'm a Microsoft fan, it got people to freak out. People lost their ass.
Yeah.
But it's not just for Linux, it's for all IT. It's about the entire organization, the cost, performance, and usability and satisfaction of the users. Now, I will tell you something. That sounds exactly like something you would say if you're trying to audit not just the Linux project, but everybody that was involved with that decision-making process, and try to find something you could systemically point to as a bad decision-making process, and then claim the entire project was predicated on that bad decision-making process, and therefore the entire thing needs to be thrown out. Yep. So I would say that the more I read into this, the more I am a little worried about this, because this is one guy, but this one guy is initiating a process, and sometimes when you launch these investigations, I've been at companies where they brought in efficiency experts who come in with something to find, because then they're the ones hired usually to fix it. It's kind of a nice
here's the thing, because I mean, it's not like Microsoft ever ships money to people in wheelbarrows that, oh yeah, that's right, they do. I am highly suspect that there's not money exchanging hands here at some level. I'm not saying that it's the mayor or anything like that. I'm simply saying that the people they bring in, what's their background? What are they, what do they prefer to use? What are, are they in fact impartial? These are things I need to know. Know. Again, not looking at the elected officials, I'm looking at the people they're bringing in. We know nothing of them.
And then the flip side of this is, okay, so the Linux migration project is done. Isn't it actually, playing devil's advocate here, isn't it proper that our elected officials would then sort of launch a review process to see how the project went, to see what they could do better next time, to see if there's anything they need to shore up to add to the budget so they can go in there and add additional training? I mean, what if all they're doing is just sort of now circling back and saying, okay, let's see how we did now that we're at the end of this 10-year process.
Right.
What could we have done to maybe make this a 5-year process? Because that's a legitimate question to ask.
Yeah, it is. It is. But, you got to be careful of the circle of bureaucracy.
Because I think even though we're all really excited because we look at this as a massive Linux deployment and we want to baby it, I watched this thing almost from the beginning, I think. I must have been.
I think it's pretty close to the beginning,
and they borked it a few times. Like, they made mistakes. They did things wrong. They went over budget. They took extra time. I mean, it all worked out, and they have done a really great work. But maybe there are legitimate questions to ask. I just hope it doesn't evolve into, let's switch back to Windows because users aren't happy.
Well, and I also think it's, you have colored opinions. If you got people that have had bad experiences with colored opinions and you're then taking their views into account, that's going to color the results in a very severe way.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you guys want to use it, awesome. If you don't, bye.
Well, like the chat room saying,
that's my philosophy.
It also like kind of, and what you're saying is it could also, if it's like an internal audit, then maybe that could go quite well.
I hope so. But if it doesn't, at the end of the day, quit giving them press. Who cares? Let them move on. If they decide to go with Windows, great. High five them and get the hell out of the way because we got the rest of the world to work with.
No, this is Microsoft's MO. In fact, our next story, the Microsoft lobby is denying the state of Chile access to free software. So just fresh on the entire Munich situation, another story involving Microsoft and free software has popped up across the world in Chile. A prolific magazine from South America says that the powerful Microsoft lobby there managed to turn around a law that would allow authorities to use free software. This is coming, I'm not even going to bother to say the magazine's name, but it explains in great detail great detail in a piece that they did about how the Microsoft lobby works, how it's structured, and how they overturned this for their own financial good. They've got a quite detailed report that goes through the entire thing. So according to this, Microsoft representatives met shortly after one of the lawmakers announced his intentions to introduce free software as a possibility for lawmakers. The bill passed the vote with 64 votes in favor, 12 in absence, and only 1 voted against it. That vote was from a member of the Chilean party. A while later, that same member of the party proposed another bill that nullified the effects of the previous one that had just been adopted. To make things even more interesting, some of the people who voted in favor of the law also had voted for the other one. So it got passed, and he submits another law that then nullifies it, and he's getting paid by Microsoft.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, remember this stuff, guys, when you're doing your elected stuff. Really kind of pay attention to these things.
I hate when it starts to feel evil when they're, and of course all companies do it, but when they start manipulating the democratic process, that, because of anything, free software is the most democratic kind of software possible. And giving and having the people's files in something that is open to the world that future generations will have access to for forever, as long as we keep the ability to read these open standards, to deny that so they can make a little more money on office sales is so frustrating. It seems so selfish. But of course that's what their job is.
That's what they do, and but not to worry. When Microsoft's doing the layoffs, I'm fairly certain that the lobbyists probably were passed by.
Wow. Well, why to put a little salt in that, man? That's a little salt there.
I'm just saying, for those that departed, because I know people that have, this is an opportunity for a clean start, and make the best of it. But honestly, I feel a lot of people are probably better off for it. They're horrible, rotten. And I'm talking about the top levels. I'm not there's good people working for that company, but at the top tiers, there's some real stupidity going on there, and you don't want to be part of that if you can't. Just get out of it.
You know what?
Better off.
And here's what you could do: go get certified. The Linux Foundation, another LinuxCon story, has announced their own certification. The Linux Foundation never had their own actual Linux certification. So here it is. Boom! It's for IT pros. The new certifications were announced at LinuxCon. The 2 new designations are the Linux Foundation Certified System Administrator and the Linux Foundation Certified Engineer. So you got LFCS.
Wow.
That's Linux Foundation Certified System Administrator, LFCS, and LFCE, Linux Foundation Certified Engineer. The new certifications mark the first time Linux Foundation has ever offered its own formal certification.
Interesting. I think it's overdue, and I think it's a good idea, and certainly the timings. There's people looking for certs. This is a good time to do it.
The pricing's really good right now too. I think it's like $25, and it's eventually going to go up quite a bit.
That's
from there.
cool. I mean, how much more standard can you get from the foundation itself, right?
They say more than 20 subject matter experts collaborated with the foundation to build the material for the 2 certification testings. It's the LFCS is the first level designation, and the LFCE is a progressively more difficult. So the engineer is a slightly higher level certification. The actual testing system is a fully online platform that was built by the Linux Foundation. To prevent cheating, the system requires that the user has an active webcam running, and the entire evaluation is ran by a real person on the other end.
I wonder if you could just plug in chat roulette in the background.
Or I could just feed it a video feed. I could just record myself here, just doing this for a little bit. Or maybe I'll just send them a Linux Action Show. That's what I'll do.
That would be hysterical. It's like that, yeah. Or it's like a loop where you just kind of twitch and it starts over,
That would be really funny.
Awesome.
So there you go. I think this is, like Matt's saying, great move for the foundation to get into this. Good time to jump to because the prices are low. Probably as they're trying to get more people on so they can work out some of the kinks. You might be a little bit of a beta tester. That happens. These certification processes actually go through that a little bit.
That's okay. Get in early. It makes you look good. And also, patch it up with some of the more standard certs as well, just to kind of round things out.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Totally. All right. Well, now, did we tempt your LinuxCon appetite, Matt? Got your beak a little wet there for some LinuxCon?
A little bit.
All right, Matt. Well, we'll go do that right now because you know what? That's all the news for this week. LinuxCon 2014 just wrapped up, and we've got a whole batch of interviews from the floor and a ton of great links in the show notes, too, including some links to talks that they've posted directly on YouTube, so you want to check that out. But before we get to those interviews, I want to thank our segment sponsor, System 76, creators of machines born to run Linux. If you have a little bit of time on your hands, you got something you got to get done. If you have a mission, if you got a job to get done, if you're going back to school and you want to use Linux, just go get yourself a System 76 computer right now. Stop fighting with your hardware and play with your Linux. They have a ton of great back-to-school specials going on right now that you can take advantage of for laptops like the awesome Ultra Pro or the amazing Leopard Extreme, up to $200 off on the Leopard Extreme for back-to-school specials. System 76 has computers built for your Linux experience to go flawlessly. I don't know. Gosh, am I almost on my 2-year mark now for my Bonobo?
I think it's about 2 years.
Almost?
Yeah.
It's got to be. Maybe
I might be 2.5.
I think it is I think it's in Thanksgiving. I think it'll be 2 years. I don't know.
Okay.
I have been so thrilled. Look at this. I'm so thrilled, Matt. I even have, ready for this? Boom, an HTML5 camera.
Oh my gosh.
Just from my Bonobo. I can show HTML5 stickers right there. You can see there's the System 76 logo right there. Yes, sir. This Bonobo is been one of the champs. There is a reason why it's right here in the studio. It's because it's one of my most reliable computers I've ever owned. And I always know whenever I load up Linux on there, it's going to work flawlessly. Same with their desktops built right here in the US of A. Go check out system76.com. Stop fighting with your hardware. Play with your Linux and tell them the Linux Action Show sent you.
Nice.
Okay, Matt. So LinuxCon, it ran this week from the 20th to the 22nd, and we had some live streams from there. We had some keynotes that we were able to stream live. Noah was down there working his butt off for us and got some great interviews. So we got 5 interviews we're going to play on the show today. Then in Linux Unplugged, we got a whole nother batch of interviews we'll play on Tuesday. So we got a lot to go through. Why don't we start? Since usually we're all over the place, this week I wanted to start with a last viewer who's a big fan of the show, and he's working on a project for those of you who are using old Fedora, CentOS boxes, and need to get fresh packages because you're running in production. You're probably familiar with the iOS community. If I wasn't, so if you're like me and you weren't, this was really interesting to hear more about what iOS does, and honestly, I wish I knew about them a lot sooner.
Walking around LinuxCon 2014, I run into a lot of really interesting people. I ran into a viewer from the show. We actually hooked up on the subreddit and started talking to him. Turns out he is part of the iOS project. So thank you, Carl, for taking time to be on the show, to give an interview to us. We really appreciate it. Tell me a little bit about the iOS project.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, my name's Carl. The iOS Community Project is a project I'm involved with. Our goal is to provide newer, up-to-date RPMs for RHEL. And that's the problem that a lot of people run into when they're using RHEL or CentOS, is that they need, say, a newer version of PHP or Python, but it's not available to them. There's other repositories out there that will provide that, but what you'll end up finding a lot of times is that if package names have the exact same name, you can subscribe to a repo, do a yum update, and get a lot of system packages upgraded that you may or may not have intended to get. And we're not cool with that at all. So we follow what we call our Safe Repo initiative. We provide packages with different names. So for example, if you want PHP from the iOS project, we have packages called PHP 55U. And what that is that it's version 5.5 point something, the latest, from the PHP project. And because it has a different name, you're not going to automatically get updated to it unless you want to. You have to explicitly tell the system to remove the old version of PHP and install our newer version. And because of that, it's a lot safer, in our opinion, than other third-party repos where you don't know what's going to happen. You may subscribe to a third-party repo to get PHP, but then you also get Redis updated when you didn't intend to.
Now, your project is essentially allowing people, it's removing some of the obstacles for people to use Linux, is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I said, that's a big problem that we see, is that people want the stability of RHEL, but then they need something, a newer feature that got added at a later point in the software's life cycle. And because of that, we enable people to keep using CentOS or RHEL when they might not otherwise do it. They may have to go with Ubuntu or another distribution that they may or may not be familiar with. Nothing wrong with Ubuntu, but if your shop and your sysadmins are familiar with CentOS, but you need the latest Python, you can do that with iOS.
Now, you actually run Linux on your personal computer, right?
Absolutely.
How about on your work computer?
Oh, yeah.
All right, now what distribution are you using on both of those?
I'm using Arch Linux.
Okay, so you actually, your work doesn't have a problem with you running such a bleeding edge distribution, that's okay?
Thankfully, no, I haven't had any problems with it. had a lot of choice in that regard.
And they're pretty supportive as well of the iOS project and your commitment to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think we've said it yet. I'm actually employed by Rackspace. The iOS project takes up the majority of my time. We also do some other packaging work internally, but the project started at Rackspace. It's fully sponsored by Rackspace with hardware and bandwidth, cloud servers and dedicated, and personnel also. Me and other Rackspace engineers work on the project, and we're lucky enough that they let us do that.
Yeah, way to go, Rackspace. That's really cool to hear. And it sounds like Carrie Hartland in the chat room says, hey, that just answered a question I emailed into the show. Nice. So that's great. And really cool that Rackspace lets them A, run Arch, and B, lets him dedicate that much of his time to the iOS project. So now while we're talking big hardware like Rackspace, why don't we talk to IBM? John from IBM tells Noah how they're able to simultaneously run workloads from computers from 50 years ago, as he puts it, to modern workloads that require like the most advanced stuff.
We're here at LinuxCon 2014 with John from IBM. How are you doing today, John?
I'm fine. Thank you for asking.
Well, first off, thanks so much for taking time to speak with us. I know that there seems to be a large concern at this conference about talking on camera about some of the exhibits. It seems like it's a very highly business-oriented conference, and there's a lot of concern about what is said on camera. So I really appreciate you taking the time. This is, even without knowing what it is, technically speaking, cool, right? Anything that involves a lot of wires and a lot of circuitry is a lot of blue light. Yeah, blue light, very techy. Now you were explaining to me this is essentially what a modern-day mainframe is.
This is the evolution of the 50-year-old mainframe. So this is what started in 1964. This is the current generation. And what you're looking at here is a business class or mid-range version of this computer, and which allows Linux consolidation. So it allows us to collapse data centers running distributed equipment into a scale-up platform using virtualization that was developed and invented in the 70s and 80s to consolidate on this platform using standard Linux, as you're seeing here at LinuxCon.
Now, we had talked earlier yesterday, really, about a little bit about how. I was saying that, you know, IBM is one of those companies that does like phenomenal things. Like you guys are like way ahead on the bleeding edge, and at the same time, I think a lot of people have, like, when you think of IBM, you don't think no particular project or product comes to mind. So is this the kind of project that IBM is working for?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this was the big bet of the company, the multi-billion-dollar bet that was made in 1964 by IBM to basically introduce general business computing to the industry, to the world. This is the evolution of that technology. So it is a big bet. About 15 years ago, in late 90s, we actually took a step using some technology out of Germany to try to bring Linux to the platform. And that's grown to today to where about 30% of our compute capacity on this platform is actually driven on Linux workloads running in this virtualized environment.
Now, I understand that IBM is trying to break into the hosting and the VPS environment. Is this the kind of hardware that I would get if I signed up for IBM VPS?
Absolutely. We've actually working with managed service providers, MSPs, and we've actually got a number of customers that have invested in this equipment. We've got an offering called an enterprise cloud server, which is a pre-packaged storage platform like this, software that can actually be, used to start up a managed service provider environment, delivering high quality services like database serving and others based on this technology. So absolutely.
Outstanding. And Linux obviously plays a key role. I assume that this kind of infrastructure just wouldn't be possible with Windows or Mac OS, is that right?
This kind of a hybrid infrastructure would probably be a little bit different to do. We've actually had customers that were running x86 Mac OS environments that actually merged into this environment because they wanted to grow their business in an enterprise-ready platform. That's how I would classify this. It can run workloads that have been running for 50 years, side by side with brand new workloads running Linux in any sort of shapes and varieties that you find here at LinuxCon.
So, Matt, are you ready for your IBM mainframe VPS?
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of, just from a...
When you call
I'm I'm curious.
Yeah, when you call up IBM and get a VPS, they're like, yeah, well, here's your back-end storage, here's your mainframe. Right? Yeah, that's wild.
You got some instances running from the 60s. We got you covered.
I hope their VPSs
cool.
have those blue lights.
Yeah, right. I mean, that helps. Star Trek.
I talked about it earlier in the show. I said that Linux is taking over networking, and that means a lot of things. Noah had a chance to start with chat with Cumulus Networks. I find this to be such a fascinating area that Linux is growing and that we don't even fully understand because, we're just not able to play with the hardware all the time.
Sure.
So we have a 2-part interview with Matt from Cumulus Networks. We're going to play part 1 in Linux Action Show today.
Cool.
We're going to play part 2 next week. So here's part 1, which I thought gave us an introduction, and then part 2 talks more about actual implementation and details like that.
We're here with Matt Peterson from Cumulus Networks, and they produce a product that I'm really, really excited. In fact, I have bugged one of the guys at their booth, probably to the point of annoyance, to get these guys on camera because I think it's so important, and I think it is so relevant, and they stand out from a lot of the other participants at LinuxCon. Cumulus Networks, I was able to attend a presentation last year, and they talked a little bit about how they believe Linux can function as a network operating system, and I'll let Matt explain a little bit more about that.
Sure. So we produce a product called Cumulus Linux, which is built off of Debian Wheezy today. And basically, it's a full Linux operating system that runs on top-of-rack data center switches. So it's the same hardware that you would get from like a vendor like Cisco or Juniper or Dell, but it's a full Linux operating system. And our claim to fame is that we do what's called hardware acceleration. So if you were to add, say, a static route, or you added a firewall rule, we actually will replicate that into hardware. So you get the performance of a traditional networking vendor, but the management interface you're used to on the server side.
So, and speaking of that, one of the big concerns of switching to like a Cisco device or a Microtech is that I would have to learn a new command line. So what is the command line interface like on a Cumulus network router?
Yeah, so it's very similar to installing, say, an Ubuntu or a Debian host. So the CLI is bash, right? So you run ifconfig and you'll see, 50 interfaces. If you want to create a VLAN, you would create a bridge and add physical interfaces to that. Same thing for a bond, for link aggregation, you would create a bond interface. So it's the same interaction you would have on a server. And one of the great things about that is that we actually ship with Ruby, Perl, Python, and of course Bash pre-installed. So that allows software like Puppet or Chef or Ansible to be supported on the platform. So the same way that you're administrating, say, your computer environment, you can now administrate it with the same tools on the network side.
Now, when you talk about shipping software, you guys actually provide your own repository, is that correct?
That's correct. So our apt-get setup is basically pointing to our own servers. We have around 300 packages, and we break that down into 5 repositories. So we have main, security updates, and updates, and that represents kind of base functionality. So that's going to be things like text editors, programming languages, libraries, and that's around 250 packages. In addition to that, we also have a add-ons repository, which is basically third-party software that we've integrated with. So that, again, that would be something like a Puppet or a Chef, where they're supported by our platform, but we didn't write that software. And the final repository is testing. So this is either new software features that we're making available to our customers before it's shipped into that mainline branch. One of the great things about Cumulus Linux is that you can still add Debian.org as an apt-get source. So if you want to go from 300 packages that we can fully support to well over 40,000, you can do that. Now, from a support perspective, it's quite difficult for us to say support R or Mathematica or something kind of crazy like that on a switch. But for a lot of customers, they may have a particular utility or a library that they need, and they have that option.
Now, if I was interested in purchasing one of these switches with Cumulus Linux installed, is it possible to just buy it, take it out of the box and plug it in, or do I have to buy the hardware separately and install Cumulus Linux on it?
Yes, currently those are separate. So just like today, if you were to buy, say, a Supermicro server, it typically doesn't include a Linux operating system pre-installed. So one way you would install that would be Pixie. So with us, we have something called ONIE, O-N-I-E, the Open Network Install Environment. And that's a fully open source bootloader that's been adopted by the Open Compute Foundation, which is Facebook's kind of spin-off of open hardware and open software for the data center. And so with ONIE, a number of manufacturers manufacturers, including Dell, Quanta, Acton, and others, support that bootloader. So when you buy a switch that's supported by Cumulus Linux, it will have ONI installed in it. And just as you would set up a Pixie environment to install your servers, that same environment can be used to install Cumulus Linux. So it's a completely unattended install. Basically, you have a DHCP server, whether it's v4 or v6. You serve an image up via an HTTP server. We fetch the image, we install, format, and reboot the host, and it's ready to go with Cumulus Linux.
So there you go. That's how Linux is coming to network hardware. And you you heard so Noah said, how do you set up network interfaces? How do you configure them? He's like, use ifconfig. Like,
that's pretty
amazing.
simple, right?
Yeah, it's wow. Really, it's kind of amazing to watch that happen. So we will have part 2. Noah asked a lot of good questions about migration, equipment, some more config stuff like that in the second half of the interview in Linux Unplugged on Tuesday. So next interview I want to play is with Puppet Master. I think it's Adolfo, I think is how you say his name. And this guy he's involved with a lot of different open source projects, Puppet being one of them, and he's a Linux advocate. And so Noah noticed that he was running Linux, and he said, okay, I've got to ask you, why are you running Linux? Why do you pick it? And all those kinds of things. So I know I had a quick chat with him.
So again, walking around LinuxCon 2014, I run into a bunch of really interesting people. And some of the people, like Adolfo here, I had the pleasure of attending a presentation he did last year on Puppet. And not only was he extraordinarily knowledgeable, and it was hands down one of the best presentations I had been to, primarily because I actually got to play with the technology he was talking about, but I also noticed he was running Linux on the computer he was using to speak. Yep. Now, you would think that at a conference called LinuxCon, it would be pretty easy to find people running Linux. Turns out, they're actually few and far between. So I wanted to stop and talk with Adolfo about a little bit about why it is that you run Linux on your desktop.
Well, first and foremost, because of practical reasons. It's I can do more with Linux on my own machine than I can with other operating systems. Second, it's a question of ethics, I guess, in that I am free to do what I want, not just technically, but because I can, because the license allows me to. So there's also a third reason, which is I'm a bit paranoid regarding my own stuff, right? And the only way for you to be sure that you own your stuff is if you can read the code that runs your stuff, that protects your stuff. And you can't do that with Macs or Windows or any closed software. The only thing you can do this with is with open source software. And this is probably, I guess, nowadays the main reason I use Linux. Plus, it's pretty easy. It's much easier for me to install Linux on my own box than Windows has become over the past few years. You know, you can't even install Mac OS on anything other than a Mac, which is a limitation in and of itself. So, I guess, you know, what I'm saying is the best operating system is Linux.
I like his Linux. Like he was like, "You're a Linux user. Come talk to me about why you run Linux." Because I'm working on I think we'll do it in Linux Unplugged. But there's so many people are just talking crap about the Linux desktop these days and how the moment is past. And I think it's so funny because as humans we have such short term. We just see everything in current perspective. We can't look beyond the current bubble that we're living in. You see this story is another story of another reason for an individual person why they switch to Linux, and each person has their own individual story, and it's a long-term thing. And there's only one person who could maybe make it go a little faster, and that would be Captain America.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, good news.
No, we got Captain America.
We've got Captain America.
What?
Yeah, Noah stopped by the Red Hat booth and had a chat with Captain America.
We're here at LinuxCon 2014, walking around the booths, and of course, I can't leave LinuxCon, or any Linux convention for that matter, without talking to Red Hat. So we're here with Karsten from the Red Hat project, and
that's right. I'm not Captain America. I'm Karsten now.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's quite all right. It's a known public identity.
You know, if you notice when you watch the footage, you notice I had to look at your name tag because the Captain America thing kind of threw me off.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Definitely.
So one of the things that I think is so cool about Red Hat and why you guys continue to be probably my favorite open source company is because you are so committed to truly, authentically advocating Linux, and you believe that Linux can succeed not only in the server architecture. I think it's kind of established itself there, But you guys believe it can work on the desktop.
Right, exactly. I mean, we're proponents of free and open source software as solutions for essentially everything. And clearly it's not a solution that everyone takes in all cases, but it's something that we've been passionate about for a really long time. And when it comes to the desktop, I mean, one of the challenges there is that it's a consumer or a user-based environment, and trying to be successful for the user can be really challenging as a company and so it has been an area that we've really gone into for the general user market. We provide workstation for our corporate customers, but it doesn't solve that huge need that you get from the general user that's out there. But one thing that we have said, and I generally stand behind this, is that for the desktop for general users, folks like you and I at home, it's essentially a commodity experience. It's nothing that we really should be paying for. There's the support of the community is not just good enough; it's excellent. In fact, if you're looking for answers, what do? You go search for answers. And where do you find them? You find them on the forums from users helping each other, and that's how we all take care of all those things. And then when you've got a distribution that you can share freely with each other and do all those things, it means that somebody in your neighborhood, somebody you know, has the possibility of having the answers as well and can come over and help fix and tweak things. And I don't know what it's going to take for us to get over the hump, but there's a point when we'll get over the peak, and just like we're seeing more free and open source software and things like phones and so forth, it's going to come all over the desktop.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. And it's one of those things where I use Fedora as my primary operating system. I was trained as a Red Hat system administrator, so it was a natural choice for me. But one of the complaints that I've heard from a lot of people, not complaints, but one of the constructive criticisms I've heard from a lot of people is that there is Fedora on this bleeding edge market that's really good for home users or even people in a production environment that, like, as you were saying, that maybe their workflow demands updates at a rapid pace, and so Fedora is going to be an excellent fit for them. But what about these users that are maybe in an office environment and we need to go we want to deploy Linux, it needs to stay there for 3 or 4 years, but it needs to be updated, in 3 or 4 years, not quite as stable as the server. There's no in-between, and I kind of understand that CentOS might be filling that gap.
Well, I think on the community side, in terms of one of the directions that we're taking the project, it's going to, and part of it, one of the things you mentioned is the years, the time frame, right? It really has to do with how fast or slow moving something is. Questions like stability and so forth are really out of the picture here because the best way to deal with open source software and stability thing is file a bug and get it fixed, right? And then it becomes more stable. So Fedora is a great desktop for a lot of users. It's the one that I use myself, and even though I work on CentOS all the time, I like to use Fedora, and that's my choice, right? But CentOS has this magical capability, this quality basically, of being a stable, slower-moving platform, right? That's good enough for what you need to do in order to build community works on top of it. So some of the things that so let me frame this really quickly so you understand where I'm coming from about how we might approach this in CentOS. We're doing variants of CentOS through special interest groups that essentially are given enough rope to hang themselves. They have the authority to direct what they want to do in their own community. And so that means that they can replace packages that are core in CentOS within their variant. And so someone would take, essentially what they would get from that experience would be that core CentOS plus some changes that made it work, such as a Zen kernel for that environment, or QEMU to work better with a modern overt management, like all these sort of things. And we know that those groups have an eye on what their community needs, and they're going to deliver that experience. So similarly, we can take the CentOS core image, and we can do changes on top of it, such as running a modern browser, running any of the libraries or any of the other system pieces that actually make things work. And then what's nice about that too is it focuses down the work that has to be done by a desktop type group to just those packages on top, and they can rely upon the fact that the platform underneath is more slow moving, and it's not going to change things on them needlessly. And there's a long if they want to know what's coming, they look and see what Fedora is doing, what RHEL's doing, and what's coming into CentOS, and that's how it goes. And so the idea of what's been proposed is a desktop special interest group of people who are interested in having desktop CentOS, a modern environment on top, or in variations. If you want to have LXDE, if you want to run KDE, things that Red Hat's not shipping, and then all those run through that special interest group. And then the idea is that group knows what their community needs, and if their community is like, hey, we're having too many troubles with this, or we need a later update for something, they have the capability of doing that.
Man, that's what I'm talking about. This is what I've been waiting for. I mean, this is fantastic. Obviously, Red Hat has built its reputation on delivering a quality product that is stable. You guys don't release things until they're absolutely ready to go. So I understand this, a project of this magnitude might take some time to get the polish on, but When might we expect to see something like this?
Well, so that's an interesting part of it is that we're working on the infrastructure of participation within the project to make it possible to do stuff. Mm-hmm. And we've invited people in, and people have brought their interest. And it's at that kind of nascent point where the group has been proposed, the charter hasn't quite been put together, but this is basically the time when people who want to influence the direction of the desktop on CentOS can come and be part of that founding circle of folks, that initial group of people who form the first special interest group to make it happen. And so that's really this first part of it, is making sure that people know that there's an opportunity here to come and do something, and also to ask for it, to look for it on the CentOS users list and express that interest, and what are those things that you need to be different about it so that it's usable for you.
Outstanding. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add about what Red Hat is doing? I mean, you guys do a ton of things. I guess the other thing I'll mention is too is props to you guys, because every Red Hat employee I've seen is, if it's a work-issued laptop, it's running either Fedora or Red Hat, and that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, some people's jobs might require different tools within the company, and that's the reality of being a corporation, is that if you need to do video editing and it's got to be on a Mac, then that's what it's got to be on, right? But the corporate standard base, what we deliver to users who don't have root on their own laptops, is based off of a Red Hat Enterprise Linux workstation, customized for our environment. I'm using all the same tooling, and a lot of the engineering and technical staff and a certain other portion of the staff choose to run their own systems, and they run Fedora, and have complete control over it. So
that's cool, and that's why I think Red Hat is just going to continually climb up, and you guys, you set the bar high for everyone else to really follow. So if people wanted to find more information about Red Hat, about what the changes in CentOS, about Fedora, where could they go?
Well, so the main place to go is to CentOS.org, or CENTOS.org if you don't know the spelling, and we have a FAQ and some information up there about what's been going on since then, and how we're basically helping to accelerate other open source projects that Red Hat cares about by having this be the community vehicle, that they can. It's slow moving. They get to do their work on top of it and move on out from there. So you get all those details are in there, and the desktop SIG is mentioned on the wiki.centos.org. You can just search for the special interest groups, and it'll pop up.
Okay, so if your brain organ had a little hard time processing what was just being said there, is Red Hat is going to be positioning CentOS to essentially maybe be the new derivative base. I think they've been watching Debian for a while, and they're a little jelly that so much stuff is based off of it. So they're going to take CentOS, and they're restructuring the project in a sense so that way people can come to them, take what they want of CentOS, build their base on top of that, and essentially spin it off into their own CentOS derivative, potentially focused for the desktop or focused for XYZ.
And I also wonder exactly what role Thor is playing.
You caught him in the background there, Matt.
Yeah. I want to know. I want to know his hair care secrets. I mean, clearly, he's got it nailed.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting play, because what it essentially is doing is it's saying, hey, you know what the big thing about CentOS is that we don't update it very often.
Right.
So let's take that main thing about CentOS and make it its strength in terms of using it as a platform to base your stuff off of. Pretty interesting, and you can see Noah was pretty excited about that.
Oh, he was stoked.
And that is actually an exclusive. At first, Red Hat wasn't sure they wanted to go on camera to talk about it, and Noah was like, no, you guys have got to go on camera and talk about this. Right. Seriously, come on camera. They made Noah come back another day, because they had to talk about it, and then they were really cool afterwards. You say, and it was a good time because they were all in comic heroes.
Oh, that was awesome.
You didn't get to see Catwoman.
No.
But one of the gals we've interviewed from Red Hat before was dressed as Catwoman. You did get to see Thor and Captain America, though.
That was cool.
In the show notes, I have links to a really good Linux performance talk. It has the slides. It has video.
Oh, nice.
If you just feel like getting super, super geeky, go check this out. I was really impressed by the Linux performance talk. Link to that in the show notes. Also, in the show notes, the Linux Foundation's entire YouTube channel, linked directly to all of the videos that they've been posting, and they probably are still posting. I would encourage you to check out the kernel developers panel, where you can hear. It's about a 30-minute talk. It's fairly interesting. There's also the state of Linux, which is interesting as well, and a few other ones are up on there right now.
Excellent.
So links to all of that in the show notes. So with that, we set our sights on Ohio Linux Fest in October, and thanks to everybody who came out and said hi at LinuxCon 2014. And yes, Noah did decide to take the Google Glass off. But rumor has it he still had it, because if you check his page on Google+, he might have a few pictures up there.
Cool.
All right, Matt, that's the Linux Action Show's look at LinuxCon 2014. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. But hey, Matt.
Yes.
Should we read some feedback?
Let's do it.
Before we get.
Let's do it.
Okay. Before we start, do you see two lights? Did I hit record? I feel like I don't. Do you see? I can't.
I see 2.
All right. Okay. All right.
I'm gonna,
I don't know. I don't know.
I think so.
I don't know.
I think
no,
so.
no. I don't know. I don't
think
know.
so.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Okay.
The 4 lots.
There are.
You know what we need is like a magnifying glass. You could just like slide over those 2 buttons, and you could just like make it.
Oh my gosh, that's a great idea.
I mean, it's not. It's like a total life hack. I mean, it's faux show worthy life hacking here.
That's a pretty good. That's a pretty good hack.
That is, get yourself some clampage.
Oots, 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 oots.
A couple nipple clamps will do you. Just pop them on there, and there it is. Boom, there it is.
Boom, there it is. Boom, there it is.
Boom, chicka, boom, boom.
All right, here we go.
Chakalaka.
It is now for reals. The Linux Action Show rap segment. And it begins. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. But Matt, before we get out of here,
all right,
I thought we should read some emails.
Let's rock and roll.
So first one comes in. It's not even an email at all. It's a subreddit post from Professor Chaos 64. He says, "Hey guys, the 12th annual Ohio Linux Fest will be held October 24th through the 26th, 2014, at the Greater Columbus Convention Center in downtown Columbus, Ohio.
Nice.
Hosting authoritative speakers and it's a large expo. The Linux Fest welcomes all free software and open source professionals, enthusiasts, and everyone interested in learning more about free and open source software. So he wants to know if anybody's going. This is his official call-out thread. And you know what I'm going to do for the duration after this post for a few days? I'm going to sticky this right there.
There
Boom.
it is.
I just stickied it. So we just stickied the Ohio Linux Fest anyone going thread if you're thinking about going to Ohio Linux Fest. And I get the sense a lot of you out there are. This seems to be one of the big ones people in the U.S. go to. So if you've been considering it, the Jupiter Broadcasting crew will be there. We'll be doing some live streams too. So if you can't make it, you can still watch from afar and go in this. We already have 9 folks in there chiming in, letting us know if they're going to make it. So it is on. The Ohio Linux Fest watch begins October 24th through the 26th. Come say hey to your boys from Jupiter Broadcasting.
Hey.
All right, Matt, our next email is also not an email. It's a subreddit post. Comes in from Miker89. He says, "Hey, guys, I thought I'd share some new games." He also emailed it in, actually.
Nice.
The Vanishing of Ethan Carter is it's a first-person mystery game where the focus is on atmosphere, mood, and the essential humanity of the characters.
Interesting.
You play as Paul, a detective who receives a letter from Ethan Carter, a boy in Red Creek Valley. Turns out the boy is in danger, and Paul travels to his hometown only to realize that things have gone horribly wrong. He links us to some videos. So here's a cool vanishing effect video that he linked us to. Check this out.
For months or years, but we keep the game systems consistent. So if there is a place from which an object is missing, you can always locate such object through your vision, even if you already know the location of it perfectly well.
Wow. Isn't that look cool?
And get the rail car back to its original location.
Yeah, the ambiance and the visual. I mean, this doesn't seem like it's a super intense game.
No, it's pretty cash, but it's a thinking man's game.
Yeah, exactly. Look at that. Look at that. That looks really cool. I love the visuals.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Good sound effects. They're timed well.
Yes, this is really cool. Okay, so that's game number 1 he sent us. All right, let me pause that because I could. Ooh, look at those controls. Nice. I could stare at that all day. All right, so then the next game is Dread Out by Digital Happiness. It's a third-person supernatural horror game where you play as Linda, a student who wanders into an abandoned town after her group goes astray from a field trip. But the town holds terrible secrets, and the group manages to wake up the evil forces lurking in the darkness. Equipped only with your wits and your trusty smartphone, you must face scary encounters with supernatural forces and solve puzzles that are blocking your path. So he's linked us to a fairly long video, and he recommends we start at about the 27-minute mark. So here we are, 27 minutes. Here we go, Matt. Don't get scared.
No, I'll try not to.
So everybody vanished that quick?
It's a Let's Play he linked us to.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm a little spooked.
Objective updated.
Okay. So it gets the objective on the smartphone there.
Yeah, okay.
This is like
the book effect. That's cool.
Yeah.
Others are nowhere to be seen, and the front door is shut tight. There must be a way out of this place. This town has been deserted for a long time. Even the bridge that connects to the main road has collapsed. It seems like everyone is really interested in checking it out.
So it's 2 mystery games, it sounds like.
That's interesting. It looks like it could definitely have a little bit of a spookiness to it, which could be fun.
That could be.
Definitely.
Matt, if I get all spooked and I need to sort of simmer my nerves, as it were, maybe I could do a little reading, maybe some productivity app
Definitely some datamation.
Datamation.com.
Yeesh.
That's where you can find Matt's writings. So there's the latest one linked in the show notes, top Linux productivity apps.
Yep. Just a latest roundup of things, some new, some old, some, you might not have even heard of.
Yeah, a couple of these I haven't heard of. Ooh, nice shout out to Viber, which just had a big update for Linux too, which is a good one. And of course, if reading's not your thing, but video games are your thing, there is always
Geek and the Gamer. Yep, we're going to be putting out a new episode somewhere between Monday and Wednesday, it looks like. So we're hoping to get one out then. So get subscribed and be in the know when a new release comes out.
YouTube.com/Geek and the Gamer. And then we'll give a mention too. Check out Linux Unplugged, episode 55 this week. We'll have more coverage from LinuxCon 2014. More interviews. Hopefully, we'll be able to get Noah on the Mumble Room and he can share us his from the floor experiences. I know he hit a few speed bumps too. He might talk about those and a few other things he observed while at LinuxCon 2014. Plus, the second half of our Cumulus Networks interview on the actual implementation and replacement process and some of the more technical aspects of that. So it should be a good chat. And we also heard from the SUSE guys. We'll have that in episode 55 of Linux Unplugged. Also, I don't mention it too often, but did you know that Jupiter Broadcasting has an Instagram account where we'll post fun things from the audience or stuff we're doing around the studio? If you ever kind of want to see some behind-the-scenes photos. Here's my son stopped in the other day during
that.
Yeah, we did a tech talk and he went on the pre-show and we had a funny pre-show.
That's cool.
And so yeah, you can always check out, and like sometimes we'll have some promo stills. Like here's the still for the 3D printing edition of the faux show we're recording later today.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah,
for sure.
So it's a good account to follow. Like here's some shots we did from OSCON, lots of stuff behind the scenes, all kinds of good stuff. So check it out, Instagram.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. You might just see your own face up there.
You never know.
You like my curtains?
Yeah, I like.
Those are from OSCON.
Are they really?
I felt like Maria from Sound of Music. Like I could make myself a beautiful dress with those curtains.
Oh my god! And he did. He did make a beautiful dress.
I did. I also wore socks with my sandals, just like Linus did in the video we played earlier.
And a bonnet from the pillowcase.
Hey, if Linus does it, how come I can't do it?
You got to have a treadmill and a computer attached.
I would be willing to make that sacrifice if I can then walk around with socks and sandals without judgment.
When you're Linus, you don't care. That's the beautiful part of it. He'll just purge you.
And for right now, I'm not even wearing shoes. So I'm not even wearing pants.
Yeah.
So who needs them?
It's wreaking good time up in here.
If you'd like to get hold of the show, go over to linuxactionshow.reddit.com. That's the best place to even start a thread. Or we'll have a specific thread just for this episode if your feedback pertains to just something talked about in this episode. Also, where we'd love to get your app pick suggestions or your runs Linux. I'd love to get a video or picture of your runs Linux setup. Please send those there. Or you can email us, go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click the contact link, and choose Linux Action Show from the dropdown. And last but not least, Matt, did you know we are live?
We are live. We are actually live right now.
It's incredible. jblive.tv. We do it at 10 a.m. Pacific, but don't worry about that. If you're not in Pacific, well, I feel bad for you, son. But you can go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, and our robots will convert that to your time zone without any judgment. That's why I have robots do it. No Pacific judgment. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week. Well, I guess I'm just not going to get this burp out. That's fine.
It'll come out.
I want to burp in during the show anyway.
It's going to come out eventually at one end or the other.
For the record, if I belch during the show, I tried to get it out before we started. Okay?
He does it for you guys.
Doesn't work. Like I would bounce.
You gotta I
would bounce my kid.
You gotta kind of get a motion going. That's probably the wrong thing. But you gotta get some motion.
Doesn't work. Doesn't work, man. Man, I got burned by Oculus, and I just can't get over it because I got it hooked up to this iMac right now.
Right. Yeah.
And that's ridiculous. That's not what I bought it for. I bought it to hook it up to my Linux box. And I thought, okay, here's what I thought. I thought, well, the reason why the DK2 doesn't work with Linux is they've introduced this new thing called direct rendering. And it only works under Windows right now because go figure.
Yeah, right.
So then when they got the Mac version out, I was like, oh, they must have figured out a way to get direct rendering working. No, the Mac just does dual display, which if you think about that, there's not a single Mac that ships for, well, I don't know for sure, that has a less than a 1080p resolution, but the Oculus is 1080p, which means then you got to drop the Mac down to 1080p, which looks redonk. Okay, first of all, Mac OS looks like balls when you scale it down that far on an iMac screen. So then you got to do display mirroring. All right, you got to do display mirroring to make your Oculus work. Well, guess what? Linux can do display mirroring too.
Yeah.
So if you're just requiring display mirroring under Mac OS X, then why the hell isn't there an SDK for Linux? Because if you're just doing mirrored,
they don't care. Yeah, apparently that's their whole. Yeah, I blame Facebook.
I'm gonna go look right now. Oculus.
Because Facebook bought them, didn't they?
Like when they were doing like this new fancy, yes they did. When they're doing the new fancy, direct rendering mode, I'm like, oh okay, maybe they got to like build something for Linux to make that work. That sounds hard. I understand.
Keep it a hardware appliance. Make them spend more money. I mean, make it worth your while. Whatever. I mean, because
No. See, Mac OS, Windows, Linux. Go F yourself. See, there's the Linux download for version 3. Version 4, what you need for the DK2.
You know what you do is you just go to Odesk and you put up like a $20 bounty, and you say, yeah, if you guys can make this work on Linux, you can get a $20 bill.
Yes. Yes.